The Pond by Courtney Lepage. Why don't you two go outside for a walk with the dog? It's such a beautiful day outside and you two are stuck inside watching TV. Mom's always trying to get us to go outside. She says that if we watch too much TV, we'll turn into couch potatoes. Fine. Nate, you coming? I asked. Yeah, I'll meet you outside in a minute, okay? He said from his bedroom. I got up and clumsily walked down to the landing. I got my boots on and took my coat off the rack, then opened the door and walked out onto the porch. The air was cold and pinched my nose when I took in a deep breath. As I zipped up my coat and slipped my mittens on, Missy, my dog, came running around the corner and jumped up onto her bench. She was a baby Labrador and was a very quick learner. Sit, Missy, sit, I told her. When she sat down, I walked over to her food bowl and poured some of her nutritious weight control food. I refilled her water and then sat down on the bench with her. 2 seconds later, Nick came out in running shoes and a sweater. Why are you wearing rubbers? He'd asked. Well, I want to go for a walk in the backyard. I don't like walking on the road because Misty chases the cars. Without saying a word, he turned back facing the door and went back inside. I didn't know if he was still coming or not, so I sat there with Missy for about 5 minutes. Nate came back outside again, but this time he wore his rubbers, a toque, and a fleece coat. Ready? Said Nate. Yep. Come on, Missy, we're going for a walk. We started by walking up Mom's rock wall, which was about at a 50-degree angle. Mom hates it when we walk on it, so I guess it was kind of our payback for making us go outside. We walked over to the trampoline, then made our way up to Dad's shed, then got on the trail. We were almost completely in the bush when we heard Dad. Guys, don't go out too far. Mom wants you back by 4, okay? He was yelling from the top of the hill. He looked like a statue standing there waiting for a response. Yeah, we'll probably be back by then, yelled Nate. Dad walked away and so did we, going deeper into the woods. It's really nice out today. It doesn't really feel like November. That's because we're in October, duh. He made a face when we heard Misty bark. We ran over to where she was barking and seen she was barking at a squirrel up in the tree. Get him, Missy, get him, said Nate excitedly. Nate, why do you hype her up like that? Stop, I said. For some reason, he always has to find a way to annoy me. Blah, blah, blah. Why do you always complain about everything? Whatever, I thought, as I walked away. I wouldn't have to complain all the time if I didn't have something to complain about. Come on, Misty, let's go, said Nate. Missy ran for him and then dodged him as he went to go pet her. She walked right into me, and we began to walk together. I looked back at Nate and smiled. He shook his head and stuck his tongue out at me, then ran up to us and started walking beside Missy. About 5 minutes of walking, Nate had stopped and said, Hey, what's that over there? What's what? I didn't see anything weird that wouldn't be in the woods. Just your average tree, bush, grass, nothing out of the ordinary. Come on, Nate said, as he took my arm and pulled me off to the trail. Hey, what are you doing? Let go. Just wait, he mumbled. I looked behind us as Missy ran behind us. We slowed down and Missy caught up to us. My eyes followed her up to a pond. She was drinking the water. Wow. The sun glimmered on the water as the trees swayed in the slight breeze. You could smell the fresh, crisp air blow across your face and sweep your hair off your cheeks. I told you I seen something. This is so cool, said Nate. I didn't know we had a pond in our backyard. Well, technically, it's not in our backyard. We did have to come off the trail, answered Nate. I walked over to the water and slid my fingers in the water. The water was freezing, but almost warm at the same time. Does Dad even know about this? I asked. I don't know. Nate was pulling cattails out of the pond, then tearing them apart. Missy was jumping in and out of the pond trying to catch the fish. Ha ha! Get him, Missy, get him, Nate said, pointing at the fish with one of his cattails. I rolled my eyes and walked over to one of the trees. I sat down at the bottom of it. I looked up at it. It was so nice here. This strange place that's been here this whole time but never discovered. Hey, come check this out, said Nate. I looked over at him, and he was crouched over something at the bottom of another tree. I got up and walked over. I seen a pile of rocks. Look, he said. He took one in his hand and stood up. He put it up in the air above our heads and into the sunlight. This place is awesome. We'll have to come back sometime, though. I said, What do you mean? He asked. I pulled my sleeve up and looked at my watch. Then I showed him. It's 3:45. We should head back. Mom wants us back by 4, remember? His face turned into a blank expression. We can stay for a couple more minutes, he said. I put my hands on my hips and said, Nate, we can come back tomorrow. Come on. Okay, he said. He turned around and started walking. Come on, Misty, let's go back home, he called out. She came running out from the bush behind us and started walking between us. A couple minutes later, Nate stopped and looked around. What's wrong? I asked. It was 10 to 4 by now, and we still weren't on the trail. I don't know where we are, he said, unsure. What? What do you mean you don't know where we are? You're the one who dragged us in here, I said. Well, it looks different now, and plus we're running. He was beginning to panic. Scarlett, I'm getting scared. Nate was only 10 years old. He was probably thinking we were going to die out here. It's okay, Nate. We'll be fine. I was trying to comfort him and think of ways to get back home. I walked over to him and hugged him. Missy came over and sat beside us. Here, sit with Missy for a second, okay? I said. He nodded his head and walked around, trying to see if I could see the trail or any of the lights from the house. No luck. We were in the middle of the woods. Nobody could see or hear us. I thought of the last time I was in a situation like this. I was at a nature camp. We had to learn how to make shelter and fire, and learn how to survive in the wilderness. Yet again, I was with other girls. We knew where we were, and there was a leader with us. It was getting darker out, so I told Nate to stay put while I went out and got some firewood. I came back with 4 big pieces of wood. I threw them in a pile and told Nate to make a fire. Our dad taught us how to make a fire without a lighter or matches when we were younger. You stay here with Missy and make a fire the way Dad showed us, remember? He looked up at me, unsure and scared. Trust me, we'll be fine. Just stay here and build a fire. I'll be back soon. I turned around and headed for the trees. Where are you going? Nate asked. I'm going to get something to make shelter with. I'll be right back, I reassured him. When I came back with more wood, Nate was sitting by the fire with Missy. Great job, buddy, you did it, I said. I came over and put the wood in a pile. You know what else you can do to help me? I asked. What? He asked. You can help me braid long pieces of long grass together. That way we can hold the pieces of wood together and then put them over top of us like a roof. Okay, where do I get the grass? I showed him where I seen a huge patch of beaver grass. It was a couple feet away from where we had set up our fire. Once we were done braiding all the grass, I had lined up the flat pieces of wood that I had found and began putting the braided grass around it to tie them up. Once it was up, Nate, Misty, and I got under and kept warm by the fire. Nate fell asleep at 9 o'clock, so I set my alarm to go off every 20 minutes to keep the fire going. It was around 11:30 when I heard wolves howling. They were really close. Missy began to whimper. It's okay, Missy. Lay down. I hoped they wouldn't get any closer, but what I really hoped for was that Nate didn't wake up. It began to rain, which really sucked, but in a good way also, because I couldn't hear the wolves anymore. I guess they didn't like the rain either. I put a couple more pieces of wood on the fire, then tried to fall asleep. When morning came, the fire was completely out. I woke up first with Misty, and Nate slept for another 10 minutes or so. Hey there, sleepyhead, it's time to get out of bed, I said when he finally woke up. Some bed. I woke up 5 times last night, with cramps in my neck. Well, sorry, it's not exactly easy to make a bed out of here. Of course, first thing in the morning, and he's already annoying me. Come on, we should start looking for the trail, I suggested. We got up and we started to walk towards where we thought the trail was. I wonder what Mom and Dad are thinking, asked Nate. I don't know, Mom's probably freaking out crying and Dad's probably trying to calm her down. Do you think they called the police? He asked. I looked over at him. He was still scared, just not as much. Well, I sure do hope so, I said. We were walking towards a really big tree when I stuck my arm out and stopped Nate. I grabbed Misty and pulled her over beside us. What? I took him and covered his mouth, then whispered, Last night I heard wolves, and I think they're right behind this tree. His eyes widened. Don't move and hold the dog. I'm going to look around the tree, okay? I whispered, and he nodded. I looked around the tree, and I almost peed myself. There was about 5 adults and 3 pups. The adults were lying around as the pups were playing with each other. They were about 20 feet away from us. I turned back around and told Nate they were just around the corner. He was sitting down with Misty in his lap. I took her from him and told him to get up. As he did so, he stepped on a branch and broke it. Of course. I looked behind the tree, and the wolves were all standing up behind us, facing us. Once they see me, they started running for us. "Climb the tree, quick!" I yelled. I swear that's the fastest I've ever seen Nate move. We were lucky the tree we were hiding had strong branches. Once we got up high enough so the wolves couldn't reach us, we sat there for about 15 minutes. "Hey, do you hear that?" I asked Nate. "Hear what? I can't hear anything over the wolves barking," said Nate. "Four-wheelers. I think I hear four-wheelers coming, Nate. There, can you see them?" "Yeah, I do." "Break a branch and wave around so they can see us," I told him. They saw us and waved, but then they came closer and saw the wolves at the bottom of the tree. "I think it's a search and rescue team," said Nate. I seen one of them get off the bike and open the compartment on the armrest. It looked like a bag of raw meat. They snuck up closer to the wolves and threw the meat away from the bottom of the tree. The wolves ran for the meat and began eating it. "Hurry down, kids. It won't be long until they're done eating that," said the one who threw the meat. Nate and I quickly climbed down and ran to the four-wheelers. There were 3 four-wheelers. Nate got one, I got on the other with Misty on my lap, and the other guy got on his. We quickly drove off before you knew it, we were back on the trail. Turns out we were only a few feet from safety. Once we got back home, Mom and Dad were sitting on the bench waiting for us. Once they saw us sitting there on the back of the four-wheelers, they ran towards us. Mom was crying. Dad was squeezing us all, and once we all thanked the search and rescue team, we all went back inside. Mom told me and Nate to go wash up, and then come to the living room once we were done. We both walked down the hallway together and into the living room. Mom asked us 100 questions. Dad asked us how we survived the night, and it went on and on. The next morning, though, after we all had breakfast together, Nate and I took Mom and Dad to the pond. Dad never knew about it either. We spent half the day there. Every day after that, Nate and I always went back. It seemed like it was our own little world, where we got along and didn't fight. And we brought our friends there sometimes too. I guess we changed after that day. Whatever it was that had happened, Nate and I will never forget that day. The end.